Welcome to the Thrive Tribe Business Growth Podcast for business owners who want to start, grow and scale their businesses with practical advice, real experiences and honest conversations.
Hello, I'm Lucy.
And hello, I'm Mark.
And together we run the Thrive Tribe, where we support business owners through training, coaching and community.
So whether you're starting out or looking to scale, you're in the right place. So welcome. This is John Armitage from Embodymind. And thank you for joining us on the Thrive Tribe Business Growth Podcast. And we've invited John in because John is a leader and thought provoker on everything to do with the body and mind. And for those of you that have been with us from the beginning of our podcasts, there's a great thing about mindset, there's a great thing about resilience, and there's also a great thing as well in terms of giving yourself a chance to reset and be in the moment, which is really, really important. So we've asked John to come along today and to enlighten us with his knowledge, impart knowledge on us all. And I say we've known John for a while, and I say every time he speaks, just makes me relax.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, in a nice way. You do, honestly. Such a soothing voice. But I think I'll start first of all just by asking what you do and how you got into it.
Yeah, what you do and how you got into it. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there are ways in which we can work in health and well-being, and it's a very straightforward kind of role, a doctor, and you can talk about the progression through to a doctor, although actually if you talk to doctors, then they start to talk about the complexities of getting into that. Likewise, being a nurse or nurse practitioner, those kind of roles. But then you get into a broader realm of health and well-being that I work in, really, and it is a little bit more difficult to just say I am this and it makes sense to everybody. So I'll try and kind of make it shorter. What I usually say to people is I am a therapist. That's the easiest thing to say, because if I start to talk about being a craniosacral therapist, then we go, oh, what's craniosacral therapy? What does that mean? Is that all the head? Is that head mass up? We get into that. So I'm a therapist. I teach mindfulness. I am a workshop facilitator, trainer. I do a lot of stuff with individuals and with groups around their understanding of well-being. So another way in which I talk about what I do is that I'm a well-being communicator. I'm really interested in us understanding our well-being and the well-being of others, more effectively, so that we can do more, that actually we can live a more meaningful and energized and thought-provoking life. That's what I'm really interested in.
And this is your own business. So
Yes.
How did you get into it?
Oh, how do I get into it? Again, it's one of those organic things. It kind of grew. Okay, so I was working in the voluntary sector. I was a program manager for a national charity. We worked with prisons, probation, social services departments, that kind of thing. We had projects all over the country, and I had responsibility for a number of those. And my daughter was born, and I realized I was working very long hours. I was kind of doing the working 60-hour weeks type thing, and I got this child on the way, and then I had this child that was born, and I'm thinking, how much time am I spending with them? In theory, at the time, I took a part-time role, and I thought that might help, but because of the level I was working at, it was bizarrely a part-time role that had uncontracted hours, so you just get the job done. So it wasn't a part-time role, really. So there was that going on. But also there were lots of questions that we asked around health when my daughter was born. She was the first child that we had. And we wanted to get our heads around what it was to look after a child. There were lots of things that came up during pregnancy, birth, around health visitors coming around and that kind of thing. We started to question things. And we were going, well, what sense does that make? Does that work? Why does that work? What's the evidence base for that? All of that kind of thing. And we realized that if we, just took the lid off some of this, we realized there was a lot of murky stuff underneath it. And actually, what it ended up turning into is I was originally going to train as a midwife because I wanted to get into working with birth and babies. But I wanted still to be part-time. And at the time, you couldn't do midwifery training part-time. You could do it full-time. I could have gone and done it via a nursing route and done it part-time, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go into midwifery. But I found another way of working with pregnancy, birth and babies, and that was to train as a craniosacral therapist. So that's what I did. So my way of getting into what I do was to train as a craniosacral therapist, which is a hands-on, very light touch body therapy or body-based therapy. And it's well known for working, or it's most known for working with babies, children, pregnancy, because it's so gentle. So issues around colic and birth trauma and that kind of thing, and smoothing particularly the kind of later stages of pregnancy and postpartum. So I did that. I trained in that, and I became a craniosacral therapist, and that was all well and good. But actually, it's more than that. And I realized that mindset, how we think about ourselves, not just how we feel ourselves to be, was kind of crucial as part of the health piece. So I trained in neurolinguistic programming, and I did my practitioner and master practitioner. I then started running groups, and these were mindfulness-based groups. I wasn't really calling it that at the time, but clients of mine would say, what can I do in between sessions to help out? And I was considering, what they were focusing their attention on, how they were talking to themselves, what their relationship with their body was like. And I was giving them suggestions of activities, practices, techniques that they could try. And I was Googling it one day, and just mindfulness kept coming up. And I thought, hang on, I'm doing that. So I started to read more and get more into mindful practice. And I ended up training in mindful awareness and in running mindfulness-based resilience programs, that kind of thing. So it's been a kind of gradual snowballing, I would say, of acquiring knowledge, skills, experience of working with people's emotions, bodies and minds, hence Embodymind. And here we are 20 years later.
And that's that longevity, isn't it? That you've actually been doing what you've been doing. And over that time, thousands of lives would have been changed. And that's what I love about the field that you're in.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And I know we've had conversations about this before. How can you be most impactful? Yeah. And yes, the foundation of what I do is one-to-one. That is, and that always has been. And it was about 2013, 2014, I started to do more with businesses. Because back in 2007, so I've been in practice for a couple of years. I've been trying to find places to practice, really struggling with finding suitable places. So I rented my own space out and rented it out to other therapists. It was natural health. It was in Lincoln. It was a place for therapists to, nourish their practice, to support each other. It gave me a free place to practice because I had therapists that were renting the space from me, and that model was helpful. But that's the thing. There was then a growing kind of networking, working with small business, working with sole traders, starting to work with larger and larger businesses. And as I started to work with even larger businesses, just the scope for large scale impact became apparent. And actually, that really, I think, crescendoed for me during the pandemic.
I think during the pandemic, anything changed in terms of people's well-being and things? I mean, I could be wrong, but I seem to think that there's more people talking about their well-being and things since the pandemic. Do you think the same, or
yeah,
do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. But I think there have been those waves, certainly over the past 20, 25 years that I can think about it. There have been different waves of talking about our mental health in particular, and talking about our health and well-being. Getting out in nature was a big one. And, if I think back to the campaigns each year that the Mental Health Foundation supports through Mental Health Awareness Week, and the themes that have been followed through that, the one that I noticed seemed to get the biggest traction was, I think it was back in 2022. It was either 2021 or 2022. And we had just come out of a lockdown. It was coming into summer. And it was nature was their theme. And so many people had an interest in that and suddenly wanted to get out again, because there had been this move towards being more sedentary, being more isolated, being more online. Funnily enough, I was at a network meeting this morning that I have just taken over. It's the Lincolnshire Wellbeing Business Network. So it's a network for those who are working in wellbeing, whether that's therapists or whether that's, someone who runs a health food shop or a gym or whatever. But we come together and it's about mutual support. It's about collaboration. It's about talking about, related issues that we can address together, kind of thing. And we were talking about finally the change that we're starting to get, which is that people did start talking about mental health much more, but there was a move to doing it online. And many of the counsellors and psychotherapists that I worked with pre-pandemic, they went online during the pandemic and continued to offer online services predominantly following it. But there does feel to be a move back towards more face-to-face, even walking. That's the thing. Walking and talking therapy, I think, is a amazing modality, and that again seems to be growing. So yes, we are talking about it, but there's still an evolution in how we're talking about it. And I think there are those waves that come and go, and things cycle round as well. So I don't think it's by any means a definite linear progression in our understanding and our support of health and well-being. But any time I think it's on the agenda is good for me.
And I think that's the thing from my point of view. It's like, you roll back 20, 30 years, if most of us were in a corporate job, if you had issues with your health and wellness and well-being, I wouldn't say you were shunned, but all of a sudden promotions seemed to struggle, and when that was it, you were kind of like cast off because of things were happening. Whereas I'm really pleased that mental health and well-being is so high up the agenda now, and especially when we've done what we've done with the Thrive Tribe and met great people like yourself, just to see that whole load of people that just want to help people. How do you, when you see people in business, what if they're struggling with their mindset? Do you have any hints or tips that you would give?
Well, the first one is knowing how you're struggling. I mean, recognizing that you're struggling, I think, is a really good first step. My sense is that very often we don't recognize that we're struggling, or we recognize that we're struggling, but we don't put it down to mindset. And I think that, this comes back to an age-old conversation around the difference between pain and suffering. We can be in quite a lot of pain, and yet we can still live a fulfilling life. We can still get on and do a whole variety of things. We can adjust, we can adapt. If we're suffering, there is something which is much more, self-destructive or stagnant. There's a way in which we're trapped by the pain that we're experiencing. And so I think recognizing that there may be an issue around mindset is the first step. And how do you do that? Well, the simple ways of doing that is, do you have that kind of sense of actively coping with stuff that happens? Is there a way that when setbacks occur, do you find yourself, reinforcing negativity around yourself? How are you talking to yourself? That's a good one, actually. How are you talking to yourself? If you notice the way that you talk to yourself when things hit fans, that's a big tell on mindset. Are you criticizing yourself? Are you being negative about the possibilities of, recovery or whatever, or fixing or avoiding the issues that have come up? If so, you've got a mindset issue. So partly it gets to that glass half full, half empty.
Yeah.
Do you sound like things are glass half empty? If so, you've got a mindset issue. But knowing that you've got a mindset issue is just the kind of first step. So then where you go from there, I think, depends to some extent on the way that you're talking to yourself. Because, of course, if you're talking to yourself about your business, and you're thinking about what's possible for your business, and actually you're thinking there are no possibilities, I don't know what to do next, I don't know where to go, you might be kind of struggling with mindset in a way that could be helped by a business coach, for example, because they may be able to offer you perspective on what your business is, the difference between you and your business, what opportunities are available for your business. So talking to a business coach can be a really good way of working on your mindset. If instead, and what you're noticing is actually it's more about you and your personal qualities that are nothing to do with the business, then we're talking about something else, and it might be more therapeutic, the route you want to go. I'm talking to a CBT practitioner or a counsellor or an NLP practitioner or someone like that, go and see a hypnotherapist. You know, it may be of more personal therapeutic orientation, because actually it's about who you think you are, your identity as a person, as opposed to how to make something happen in business and the kind of knowledge and skills that come from working with a business coach. So I think it really depends, but there are just so many options available, and it all starts, I think, with having that awareness and acknowledgement. You know, actually it's a little bit like, you know, the old idea of, yes, I recognize I've got a problem.
Yeah.
Now what do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, half the battle is people, as you say, realizing they've got a problem and then seeking help. And that's the whole thing we've covered in the podcast so far, is the fact that, you know, in business, nobody should be alone.
Right.
You know, there should always be an outlet to talk to others, to communicate, you know, because, you know, I would love to say that the world, or my life or anyone's life, has been absolutely perfect. But unfortunately, there's rocky paths along the road, isn't there? And finding some to help, you know, in whatever phase of the life that you're in or business that you're in, is just so important. You can talk to somebody, you know, seek counsel, you know, whether it be friend, a professional, you know, just someone to work things through, because sometimes we need that. You know, our brains are wonderful tools when they're working, but when they start to stutter, it's about that realization that you have, you know, something needs to change, and then just seek help.
Yeah.
So important.
But again, coming back to, you know, what are simple ways to start with something like that, the Ikigai framework, I think, is a fantastic one to start with. I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you before, but you know, if you look at Ikigai, that's Ikigai, and it's from the Japanese, meaning kind of roughly life purpose, you know, reason to get up in the morning type idea. And there are 4 quadrants to it. There is, what am I good at? What do I enjoy? What sustains me? And what sustains others? So there's what makes a contribution. Often when you look at it online, it will talk about career in terms of what sustains me, but I think it's broader than that. It is about what sustains me. So you can use that as a quick filter, and you could do it in 5 minutes. You could just go, okay, I'm thinking about my business. What do I enjoy in my business? Let's make a list of all the things I enjoy. What are the things I'm good at in my business? Let's make a list of all that. What about my business actually is sustaining me, and whether that's earning a living from sustaining it, or, you know, whether it's you know, just I've got all the resources within the business that I need, you know, all of that kind of thing. Is it paying me enough? But also, does it light the fire in my soul type stuff? But also, what contribution does it make? What difference does it make to other people's lives? How does it help other people? And you just make a list of those, you know, and straight away you've got an instant audit. Because if you've got what do I enjoy, and you've got one thing,
Yeah.
well, the cup of coffee I have on the way into work in the morning, ooh, you know, there's a whole rich seam of work that you can do. But if you've got shed loads of things, you're going, all right, that's okay. What am I good at? Well, do you know, at the moment, all I'm thinking about is my finances, my end of year returns. I'm useless at money, kind of thing. If you have something like that coming up, well, there, you've got something that you can work with. And again, a coach could be a really good way of working with something like that. But likewise, if it's something about sustaining, or, you know, I'm just not earning enough from it at the moment, and you could then go, okay, so what can I do about that? I can address that. And likewise, actually, everything's going fantastically about the business, but the thing that's bothering me is it just feels pointless. So you've got a real gap there. Is there a way that you can reorientate it? So you can use all that stuff that's working well, but it can actually start to make a difference to people. Or is there an aspect of the business that you could, you know, amend to make it more applicable to a kind of communal value?
When you've got, if you're the business owner and you've got stuff underneath you, it's sometimes people think, oh, well, I need to be everything all the time. But actually, taking time out for your own well-being is giving a good example to your staff to make sure that they're going to do the same as well.
Well, that's the thing. If you're thinking about a leader, you know, and I'm sure we could have a whole podcast, we can have a whole week on talking about what is a leader. Okay, some of the things, what do they offer? Number one, vision. You know, they give vision, direction. Yeah. Another one, they challenge. Leaders are the ones that can say what's working, where is it working, what is not working, all of that kind of thing. What else can a leader do? A leader can model, and that's the thing. And you know, this has been something which, again, got very much put on the agenda during the pandemic and after, and that is, what does modeling look like, and what's the difference between instructing staff to look after their well-being and showing staff how to look after their well-being. And I think that is so important, recognizing the impact we have as leaders. So, there was a little bit there that you alluded to before, Mark, about, maybe I'm wanting to help people. Do I look after myself? Well, it's one of those things that has to be an important part of my way of living. There has to be a way in which I've got to model aspects of that. No, like everybody, of course it's not perfect. Of course I have my mindset issues, my ups and downs, my health issues. I was talking about being unwell with viral illness recently. These things happen, but how is it we adapt to that? And this comes back to the resilience piece that you talked about earlier on. Resilience had a very bad name. And again, I think that certainly within higher education, and this started, I think, back in kind of 2018, 2019, there were a couple of reports that came out about resilience in higher education. And they were quite damning around the term resilience. And partly that's because the framing of it was almost being used as, toughen yourself up. If you work on the resilience of your staff, what you're doing is you're pushing all the responsibility for well-being onto your staff. And actually, no, resilience is about a partnership between the individual and the community. You've got your own qualities, but then you've also got the resources in the environment, and you've got to be able to access both of those. So there is a thing around the resilience piece and about changing the way that we understand that I think is also really important here too. But of course, the base of that then for a leader and a manager is modeling resilience, modeling adaptability. Where do you start with small businesses, and how do you start as you mean to go on? And I think one is, okay, how am I going to look after my role as a visionary within this business, as a model within this business, as a challenger and inspirer within this business? And how can I sustain that? What do I need in order to sustain that? Who are the people I need around me? What are the resources I need? What's the downtime that I need? These are, I think, some of the things. If we can start to ask those questions early on, we've got a much greater likelihood of being able to sustain our business through its ups and downs, through the changes that occur. Yeah.
Just having those foundations, isn't it? Having that real strong foundation that actually, and I think small businesses and solopreneurs have got I think it's really exciting because they've got that chance to have that business to start with and kind of mold it how they want to mold it and how it's going to, laying those foundations down to start with, so that things can be built strongly on top of them. But the one last question I have for you is, what would you say if a business owner was very, like you just said, modeling great behavior and everything else, but they had somebody else in their team that just had a negative mindset, or there was negativity within that person? How would you advise that business owner to address that?
Good question. Because I think depending upon how it manifests, you'll approach it different ways. One thing that I think universally supports that is adopting a coaching approach. So enabling someone to recognize the impact of their behavior in the work environment. And, there are some really simple coaching models that enable you to do that. So the simple conversations where you just, after something has happened, you talk through with someone, you say, well, what went well about that? What was good about that? Well, what did you contribute to that meeting that you were really pleased about? What were the tricky bits for that? What do you think didn't work in that? And so you start to have that conversation that puts them at the forefront of the, solution. And, what would you do differently? So you've got, you're good, you're tricky, you do differently. And then reversing that round, but asking permission with that. So, can I give you some feedback on that? And as soon as you'd ask someone, can I give you some feedback? They're going to go, yes. If I was going to tell you something that would really help you, would you want to hear it? And of course you're going to go, well, yeah, okay. So then you go, well, I think you did this really well. And I think you seem to struggle with that. And so that might be an opportunity then to start bringing up with them. You mentioned this. How are you thinking about this? Is there another way of thinking about this? So, adopting that kind of coaching approach, I think over time can be a really good way of doing that. And, in the immediate term, Some of it is about fostering a communicative environment. Are we going to have an environment where we do talk about what helps and what hinders? And I think, again, that can take time to establish, but once it's established, you can nip things in the bud. And, because I've worked with some teams where that's been an issue, and the kind of biggest communication issue has been, we've got these individuals within our team that have a particular way of viewing what's going on that just really seems to hit the vibe, hit the atmosphere. It kind of brings a kind of emotional charge with it. And one of the things that has always helped that is, okay, how are we talking about what works and what doesn't work? How are we talking about what our contribution is to whatever we're collectively doing? How are we talking about how we show up and what we can do about how we show up? And of course, within small businesses, you can often, really shortcut some of this, because, you might have the potential to have one-to-ones much more frequently, effectively. So if you struggle with one-to-ones, get some coaching support so you can take some of that into the one-to-ones that you have. So really, I suppose the long-winded answer to your question is develop the relationships, develop open communication. If you struggle with it, seek help, advice, support, guidance on how you can do that. Because if you do work on that, then you're going to be able to have anybody in your team pretty much. And you can work with their strengths, with their skills, with what they're good at, and enable them to recognize that and to amplify that, rather than just sit through the negativity that someone might bring.
I think for me, it's funny when we talk about the well-being, just flicking back to well-being, but a lot of us just keep pushing and pushing and pushing when we're at work. I know that you've released some really nice audio snippets, and I thought that was wonderful. So first time I've ever done it was when I became part of your newsletter, but that ability just to take, I think the first one was like 3 minutes, and I just sat there intently listening to my breathing, and it made me realize how much I rush about. I'm very passionate about what I do. I love what I do. Sometimes days turn into night in terms of work, and, we're always on the go. But just taking that 3 minutes for myself, obviously other exercises are available, but I just found that really useful. And I think with a lot of business owners, we work and work and work and work until we break, and then we need repairing again. Whereas I think the conversations that we've had in the past about, looking at what happens now while you're fit and healthy, we want to keep that, and then reflecting on, what you can do. Just give us just 30 seconds about the breathing, just in terms of being mindful of it and the benefits it brings.
Well, ultimately, it comes down to some of the truth about human nature. There are some absolutes in life. We have a stress response, we have a relaxation response. You need to use both of them. We need to exercise both of them. The breathing that you're talking about there, what that's doing is that's stimulating the relaxation response. Our breathing is one of the things we do from the moment we're born till the moment we leave this earth. And it is influenced by our emotional state. It's influenced by our intentions. It's influenced by our mindset. So if we can reset that, we've just got that chance to let go of some of the things that we're holding on to around those emotional states and our mindset. A really simple way of doing that then is just to get into a steady rhythm of breathing. So you pause, you stop. You just do a nice out breath like that. That's a really simple one. You do that now. How is it?
Nice.
What's it feel like? Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Also, just stretching it a little bit, because one of the things we often don't want to do is we don't want to look weird socially, but then we can be given permission to look weird. Yeah. So I can say to you, it's all right for you to take a really deep breath now, so you can really feel your chest expand and really kind of do a to let it out. Go ahead.
Just feels like calm, relaxed.
Yeah, you see, because it's different to what you would be doing if you're in I'm always on. I'm always on. What we're getting to here is the stress response and relaxation response, truth, but we're also going to stillness and motion truth. Another way of doing it is take a deep breath and just breathe out for longer than you breathe in. That will stimulate a relaxation response. There are so many ways of tapping into something that just resets you, triggers the relaxation response, and it can take as little as 10 seconds. But 3 minutes is a really brilliant space within your day. Do that 3 times a day, you've got 10 minutes. Anybody who says they haven't got 10 minutes has a mindset issue. You've got 10 minutes and you will be more productive. We know that because the research tells us that. If you take those little 3-minute stops, then you do something afterwards, you're going to be faster, more efficient, more focused. You'll get more work done in the long run.
A couple of quick questions before we wrap up. What has genuinely helped you grow your business?
What has genuinely helped me grow my business? Me, really, I would say connections, people I know, people that I've formed relationships with. Because when I think about all of the times over the last 20 years when I have grown, because I've grown like you, I've grown, I've shrunk, I've grown, I've shrunk. As we've talked about, I'm in a period of kind of readjustment and reframing now. And I as before, it will be the connections that determine how much I can grow the different aspects of the business that I want to grow.
People is so important. Those connections, collaborations, networking, it's really good.
Yeah.
What's one simple thing that somebody could do this week to improve their business?
Well, of course, apart from signing up to my newsletter, there would be all joining the Thrive Trolley. Okay, because that would definitely improve their business, doing a boot camp with you. What's one thing that they can do? If you haven't worked on your business and you've just been working in your business, take 15 minutes out. In fact, even better, take half an hour out. Have a coffee with someone that you know who is also in business, someone that you trust, and have a chat with them just about being in business. So if you haven't done that, do that and just notice how you do it. So you are, checking in with, how am I feeling about it at the moment? Where am I going with it at the moment? Because that will probably tell you more than all sorts of other things that you could do. I think that's one piece of advice that I give myself and others give me. And I, do want to always heed it. That is, take that time out to work on your business. So if you haven't done that, do that.
Love that. It's really, really good. John Armitage from Embodymind, thank you very much for imparting your knowledge. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. So we covered in there, amongst others, mindset, resilience, breathing, taking time for yourself, North Star, Ikigai. Thank you. I'm glad you said that on me. We could talk for hours, and invariably we will definitely have you back, because in terms of everyone that's either employed, setting up their own thing, got hundreds of staff, all of this is so important. And I think as I said earlier on, I'm just so happy that it's now not a woo-woo thing, as somebody said once to me a few years ago. We all need to look after ourselves, and whether it be, going in the gym, doing something just takes you away from it, because we only have one body. And as we say,
you are your most essential resource.
That's it. And if we can start looking after it now and train it, because obviously we are in charge, then I think it's just so important to of our longevity in terms of.
And of course, it's always now. Yeah. So you've always got a chance to start looking after it.
Definitely.
If anybody that's listening to this podcast has got any questions, how can they get in touch with you? You can go to my website, which is www.embodymind.co.uk. There's a contact form there. You can sign up to my newsletter. You can come to a variety of different business networking groups around Lincoln and Lincolnshire, because I go to those. If you are in a wellbeing business yourself and you're not aware of the Lincolnshire Wellbeing Business Network, then do get in touch. I'm assuming they can get in touch with you, and you will pass that on as well, because we would love to have more people involved in that network. We're going to have some things coming up over this coming year that will be collaborations through that network. So those are some of the ways. But you can find me on LinkedIn,
usual kind of stuff. LinkedIn, Instagram, embodimind.wellbeing, TikTok, embodimind.wellbeing. Get in touch.
Or you can put a comment on the comments section here, or email us at contact@thethrivetribe.com.
John Armitage from Embodymind. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to the Thrive Tribe Business Growth Podcast.
If you found this useful, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and feel free to share it with another business owner who might need it.
And if you'd like more support, you can find us inside the Thrive Tribe community, or get in touch to find out more about our programs at thethrivetribe.com.
We'll see you in the next episode.